Welcome back to Red and Blue. I'm Caitlin Huey-Burns. Well, CPAC is in full swing, and while former President Trump and many of his allies flocked to that conference, several high-profile Republicans who are expected to jump into the race for the 2024 nomination are actually skipping the event. Among those staying away, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, former Vice President Mike Pence, South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, and Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin. Well, joining us now from the conference in National Harbor, Maryland, are Fin Gomez and Aaron Navarro. Fin, of course, is CBS News political director, and Aaron is a CBS News political reporter. Good to see you both, even though I saw you both there just this morning when I was there as well. And what's so striking about this year's conference is kind of the people making news for not being there. Fin, I'm wondering what you make of these kind of high-profile figures like Pence and DeSantis skipping this kind of event.
Yeah, CHP, greetings from National Harbor, Maryland. This is my 10th CPAC in all of the years, fifth presidential cycle. This is one of the most unique ones that I've covered so far because simply it is really revolving around one candidate, and that is former President Donald Trump, who's really, a few people talking to us just a little while ago told us that this was really the Trump show. And that's what it's really turned out to be, not only because of all the signage and the people that are here, former Trump officials, former Trump campaign officials, people associated with Trump. We saw Steve Bannon here, Donald Trump Jr., others. But also because, as the point you state, CHB, is the fact that it's really a story about who's not here. And a lot of those folks, a lot of those 2024 potential candidates are somewhere else. And where they are is in Trump's home state. They're only 3 miles away from this other retreat that's happening, this donor retreat that's being held by the Club for Growth. And guess who was not invited? And that was Donald Trump.
Fin, that's fascinating because you kind of have this counter-programming going on. And it's interesting to see those potential candidates kind of staking out their claim, especially in Florida. Aaron, I want to go to you because, we're talking about those, high-profile people who are not there. But Nikki Haley, who is actually the only other declared candidate in this race, is actually speaking at CPAC tomorrow. Why is that? Like, what's her strategy here?
Hi, Caitlin. So for Nikki Haley, who's both going to be at CPAC tomorrow as well as the Club for Growth retreat that Fin mentioned, talking to her camp, they think it's a sign that she can appeal to all Republicans across the base, whether that be in Iowa, New Hampshire, CPAC, or Club for Growth. They make the argument that Haley's trying to get as many Republican voters as she can. She has the profile to do that. So she can go talk to Trump's base here at CPAC and then go talk to other donors that have an open mind in Palm Beach in the Club for Growth retreat. So her and Vivek Ramaswamy, Vivek will be talking tomorrow. And he will not be at the Club for Growth retreat, but it's just a sign that Republican candidates are getting ready to appeal to all sides of the Republican Party as we get 2024 underway.
Yeah, a lot of different constituencies there that they have to navigate in this new party. Fin, what do you make of what you've heard so far today? I mean, when I was there, I was hearing a lot of focus on education and kind of these culture war issues that Republicans have been talking about. Is that kind of more of what we expect?
Yeah, I've heard of a lot of that. As also, of course, this is CPAC. But it really should be called the MAGA convention because you're hearing a lot of these themes that we're hearing a lot from that base, that 20 to 30% of the base of the Republican Party who are fervently backing Donald Trump. And what you're hearing now is a lot of the echoes, a lot of the similar arguments and rhetoric that you're hearing from Donald Trump on the campaign trail, you're hearing here. Again, we heard just a little while ago calls for the impeachment of Secretary Mayorkas, of even the President of the United States. You're hearing a lot of the same tenor, same arguments, same topics that you would be hearing from a Trump speech. So yes, you are hearing a lot of these culture warrior concepts and themes that we've heard from Donald Trump. Again, CHP, this has really become. CPAC has really trended to more of a Trump show than anything else.
Yeah, I wonder if they'll rebrand next year, Fin, to Trump PAC or MAGA PAC. I like how you described it there. Aaron, I want to talk about another.
Sorry. one quick point. MAGA Inc. is here, by the way. The super PAC that's aligned with Donald Trump, they're here. They have their own kiosks. They're even broadcasting and interviewing people who are here, and people like Donald Trump Jr. is there, and we even saw Mike Lindell, the pillow guy, all these familiar characters that we've seen so often during the Trump tenure.
Yeah, and we'll wait to see what he says when he speaks there on Saturday. It'll be interesting to see if he goes after his rivals. I mean, one of the rivals he's been going after, Aaron, is Governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis. I know you've been following his book tour in Florida this week. We also know that you have new reporting that he is expected to go to Iowa next week. We know nobody goes to Iowa by accident if you're a politician. What more can you tell us about that trip?
That's right. According to two sources familiar with the planning, Governor Ron DeSantis is going to make his first trip to an early presidential primary state this year. He's going to Davenport and Des Moines, Iowa on March 10th. And these are going to be interview-style events with Iowa's Governor Kim Reynolds. And he just hosted Reynolds this past weekend at his retreat to talk about school board races. But if you look that same day, Nikki Haley's throwing events in Iowa. 3 days later, Donald Trump will be holding an event in Iowa. So people are really getting their gear started. But for Ron DeSantis, it's a clear sign. He's really been ramping up his out-of-state political travel. He won't be at CPAC this week, but he will be in Texas and California for fundraisers. He's been starting his book tour in Florida. That was just that. Tons of presidential energy, tons of voters that I talked to that think that he can take on and beat Donald Trump in a primary. We will see if Ron DeSantis decides to get in, but there's certainly a lot of energy for him in his home state, and he's about to find out in these next couple of weeks if that energy matches in other states.
Yeah, Aaron, that's exactly what the criticism has been, right? That, whether he can translate that into living rooms in Iowa, where it's a much more intimate kind of environment. Well, I know you both will be out there often for us. So Aaron Navarro and Fin Gomez, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining.